Solve by factoring. Everything is to one side, so I don't have to worry about it. So I'm simply going to factor 3x squared. I will be left with x squared minus 16, that's equal to 0. Remember, product of two terms is 0. That means one of them has to be a 0. So 3x squared is 0, or x squared minus 16 is a 0. Dividing both sides with 3, I get x squared is 0. That means x is equal to 0. X squared is 16. That is, x is equal to plus or minus 4. Solve by factoring. I have 4 terms here. That is 3x cubed plus 2x squared is equal to 12x plus 8. I bring everything to one side. So 3x cubed plus 2x squared minus 12x minus 8 is equal to. I work with the first two and then the last two. From the first two terms, I can factor only x squared. So I'm left with 3x plus 2. From the next two terms, I can factor negative 4. So I'm left with 3x plus 2 equal to 0. I see 3x plus 2 common, so I bring it down. So if I take 3x plus 2 here, I'm left with x squared here and negative 4 here. I bring those down. Product, that means product of two numbers is 0. That means one of them has to be a 0. So 3x plus 2 is 0, and x squared minus 4 is 0. So I get x is equal to negative 2 over 3, and x squared is equal to 4. That means x is equal to plus or minus 2. If I did not have a radical here, I would go ahead and simplify it much more easily. But the radical is kind of a problem here, so I want to get rid of the radical. So the only way to get rid of the radical is to make sure the radical is by itself. In this case, it is. So I'm going to go ahead and square it. So when I square a radical, it becomes radical free. So I have only 2x plus 13 here. And x plus 7 squared is x plus 7 times x plus 7. So when I go ahead and FOIL that, I would get x squared plus 14x plus 49. Remember, I don't have a radical now, so I bring everything to one side. That is, I subtract 2x, I subtract 13 from both sides. And now, what do I get on this side? This side would be a 0. This would be x squared plus 12x plus 36. What do I do? It's a quadratic. I'm going to go ahead and factor it. So factors of 36 that add up to 12 are simply plus 6 plus 6. So I'm going to set each one of them to 0. I don't have to set each one of them. I can set only one of them to 0 because they're exactly the same. So my answer is going to be x is equal to negative 6. Six x 5 over 2 minus 12 is equal to 0. I need to make sure the variable with the exponent is by itself. So I add 12 on both sides. So I get 6x 5 over 2 is equal to 12. I divide by 6. I get x to the power 5 over 2 is 2. Now what do? I need x by itself. So you always raise it to the power of its reciprocal. So if it's 5 over 2, you raise it to 2 over 5 on both sides. Why? Because 5 over 2 times 2 over 5 is equal to 1, and this would simply become x power 1, that is equal to 2 to the power 2 over 5 is your final answer. Sometimes you can go ahead and write it as a radical. Remember, the bottom one is always the root, the top one is always the power. So I'm going to say fifth root, which is the bottom, and the power, 2 squared, is 4. Problem 3b. In this case, everything is inside the parentheses and power, so it becomes easy for me. What do? I raise this to the power of 3 over 2, always the reciprocal. So now this becomes x minus 4, because 2 over 3 times 3 over 2 gives you a 1. And 16 3 over 2 is, you have two cases here. You would get positive 64 or a negative 64. Alright, when you plug it in your calculator, you get positive 64 or negative 64. That means x minus 4 is positive 64. X minus 4 is negative 64. So I get x is equal to 68 and x is equal to negative 60. Problem 4a. When I look at this problem, I look at this problem like this. X squared minus 5x plus 4 is equal to 0. And I'm going to go ahead and factor this one. What do I get? X minus 4 and x minus 1. But I don't have x squared and x. I don't have x squared and x. I have x power 4. So in place of x, what do I see? X squared. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go back and change them. So this becomes x squared minus 4. This becomes x squared minus 1. And I set each one of them equal to 0. What do I get? X is equal to plus or minus 2. X is equal to plus or minus 1. Remember absolute value problems? Absolute value of x minus 2 is 7. That means this x minus 2 is positive 7, or x minus 2 is negative 7. So I have x is equal to 9, or x is equal to negative 5. Problem 6. I have t is equal to square root of d over 2. In this case, this function models a basketball player's hanging time, where t stands for seconds and d stands for distance. And in this problem, they gave me the time, which is 1.16, and they're asking me to find the distance. So I'm simply going to multiply here. That gives me 2.32. And square root of t. Remember, how do I get d by itself? By doing the opposite, I square on both sides. So I get d is equal to approximately 5.38.